The silence in that room wasn't just an absence of sound, it was a weight. It spread across the walls, the cold floor, the unmade bed, and mostly across Daniel's chest. There were days when he was certain the silence screamed louder than any word ever spoken to him. Afternoon light flickered through a gap in the curtains. Not because the sun was shy, but because he had closed everything. He didn't want to see the world functioning normally while everything inside him had stopped. His phone vibrated on the nightstand. 1, 2, 3 times. Daniel didn't move. He already knew what it was. Another ignored message, another, you need to snap out of it, another, it'll be okay. Beautiful phrases spoken by those who never had to wake up every day carrying the sensation of failure glued to their skin. Daniel was 38, but he felt too old to start over and too young to accept this as the end. Still, everything inside told him there was no strength left. It wasn't the first time he thought about giving up, but it was the first time that thought wasn't accompanied by fear. And that terrified him. He sat on the edge of the bed, face buried in his hands. His fingers trembled from a weariness that sleep couldn't fix. He had lost his job 8 months ago, 10 years of service gone overnight. Then came the bills, the shame of asking for help, and finally, her. There were no shouts, just a short conversation and a sentence that echoed to this day. I don't know how to reach you anymore. Since then, Daniel existed on autopilot. But today, the silence was heavier. He walked to the bathroom mirror and stared at a stranger, sunken eyes, unshaven beard, slumped shoulders. When did you become this? He whispered. A sudden urge to disappear for a few hours, or forever, washed over him. He splashed water on his face, looking at the distorted reflection that perfectly symbolized his life, broken and out of place. He returned to the room. The phone vibrated again. It was the bank. He turned it off. Enough, he whispered. He pulled the curtain slightly and saw people rushing by outside. The world continued without him. I tried, he said softly. I really tried. He sat back down. The thought that had been haunting him for weeks finally took a calm, logical form. Maybe it's better to stop fighting. Just as he closed his eyes, someone knocked at the door. Firm, but respectful. A low voice came from the other side. Daniel? I know you're there. His heart raced. It wasn't a familiar voice. He opened the door just enough to see a simple man in worn clothes with a serene gaze. Sorry to bother you, the man said. But I needed to talk to you. Who are you? A stranger, the man replied with a faint, human smile. But sometimes, it's the strangers who arrive when no one else does. The man handed him a simple, crumpled envelope. Please read this, before you make any decisions today. What decision? Daniel asked, stunned. The one you think no one noticed. When Daniel looked up, the man was already walking away. Wait, who are you? Someone who has also been where you are, he replied, and then he was gone. Daniel sat with the envelope for long minutes. The handwriting was human, shaky in some spots. If it's a joke, I don't have the strength for it, he muttered. He opened it and read. If you are reading this, it's because you've reached the point where silence seems more comfortable than trying. I know what it's like to wake up tired even after sleeping. I know how it feels to wonder if anyone would notice if you stopped existing. I'm not writing to convince you of anything, only to remind you of something you forgot. Pain is not proof of failure. Pain is proof that you tried. If all you can do today is keep breathing, that is already enough courage. Stay alive for one more day. Just one. A tear fell, blurring the ink. This wasn't a letter of empty promises, it just told him to hold on a little longer. The thought that felt final was now cracked. Daniel put on a coat and went outside. He walked aimlessly until he saw the man, Miguel, sitting on a park bench. Daniel sat beside him. Why me? Daniel asked. Because yesterday, I sat on this very bench, holding a similar paper, Miguel replied. Someone did the same for me years ago when I had decided to go away. I thought I wouldn't be missed. I was wrong. Thank you, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. Don't thank me yet, Miguel said. Life will still ask hard choices of you. But today, you chose to stay. Daniel returned home that night with steps slower than usual. It wasn't fatigue, it was as if his mind was trying to process a glitch in his own reality. Nothing had objectively changed in his life. The job was still gone, the bills still sat mockingly on the table, and the apartment's silence remained. Yet, there was something new, a small, stubborn resistance to the idea of vanishing. He stood in the middle of his living room, observing the space as if entering it for the first time. Every object was a heavy anchor of memory. The chipped mug in the cupboard, a gift from her, the sunken sofa, where they had their final, crushing argument, the withered plant in the corner, forgotten like so many other things. Just one more day, he whispered, leaning on the letter's words. He sat at his desk and opened a drawer filled with old resumes. They felt like relics of a man who no longer existed. But something pushed him. He turned on the computer, the screen's glare stinging his eyes. He updated his CV, adjusting dates and refining words. Each edit felt like a silent declaration. I am still here. That night, he dreamed of a train station. High-speed trains roared past, but none stopped. He stood on the platform, paralyzed by the fear of boarding a train to an even worse destination. Then, someone sat beside him. They didn't speak, they simply stayed. Daniel woke up at 6:12 a.m. Against all odds, he got up. He showered, dressed, and ate. Not because he was motivated, but because he had decided not to abandon himself that day. When he left the building, he saw Miguel on the same bench. Good morning, Daniel said. Good morning. You came back, Miguel replied. I didn't promise anything more than a day. Sometimes, Miguel said, a single day is all life needs to change its course. As they walked, Miguel revealed he had been a bus driver before his life crumbled. He had lost everything to an illness, debts, abandonment, and the feeling that his story was over. But someone stayed, Miguel explained. A stranger. It's a chain, Daniel. And now, you are part of it. Later that day, Daniel's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Daniel, this is Horizon Solutions. We received your resume months ago. A vacancy just opened up. Would you be interested in an interview? His heart skipped. Yes, he replied, his voice barely a whisper. Yes, I am. The interview was scheduled for 2 days later, 2 days that felt longer than the previous 8 months combined. Daniel tried to guard his heart. He knew that excessive hope could easily turn into localized pain. Yet, something inside him was awake, listening for life to knock at the door again. He met Miguel again the next morning. You never miss a day? Daniel asked. Lately, I've been staying longer, Miguel replied. Because of what you reminded me, that it still makes sense to sit here. Miguel finally shared the darker parts of his story. He spoke of an autoimmune disease that was invisible at first, then crippling. People believe you when they can see the wound, Miguel said with a hollow smile. But when they can't, you just become a problem. People get tired of waiting for you to get better, and they drift away in silence. He confessed that he had once sat on that very bench with a suicide note in his pocket. I was going to leave that day, but a man sat next to me. He didn't ask questions. He just sat. Then he gave me a letter. The same one you gave me? Daniel asked. The essence was the same. He told me, stay one more day. If it still hurts tomorrow, we'll talk again. Daniel realized Miguel wasn't just a mentor. He was a survivor paying a debt to a ghost. On his way home, Daniel passed a small church. He wasn't religious, but he went in and sat in the back row. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to not have all the answers. Before bed, he wrote a note to himself. Today, I stayed. On the morning of the interview, Daniel dressed with care. He wasn't trying to pretend to be someone else. He was just trying to not disappear. On the way to the office, he saw a woman huddled against a pharmacy wall, holding an empty plastic cup. Months ago, Daniel would have walked past, blinded by his own misery. But today, he stopped. He counted the coins in his pocket. It was barely enough for a coffee or his bus fare back. He chose the woman. He bought her a coffee and a simple bread roll. "It's not much," he said, handing it to her. "But it's what I have." She looked at him, surprised. "Are you okay, sir?" The question hit him like a physical blow. He didn't give the automatic, "I'm fine." "I'm trying," he admitted. Then, "Good luck," she smiled. Daniel walked to the interview with a racing heart. The meeting was professional and objective. When the recruiter said, "We'll be in touch," Daniel didn't feel the usual crushing defeat. He felt continuity. That evening, the call came. He got the job. It wasn't a movie ending, the world didn't burst into song, but he felt an immense sense of relief. He found Miguel and told him. "I knew it," Miguel said proudly. "Because you stayed. Today I helped someone," Daniel said. "Even though I had nothing." "That's when you realize," Miguel replied, "that you were never completely empty." The first day of work wasn't a glorious victory, it was a battle against fear. Daniel felt like an imposter among the normal people. During his lunch break, the old wound reopened. He saw a photo of him and Anna from the day they moved in together, a lifetime of promises packed in cardboard boxes. The guilt was suffocating. He realized he hadn't just lost her, he had shut her out. He went to the restroom, locked himself in a stall, and whispered, "I failed you." But this time, he didn't run. He sat with the pain. On his way home, he did the hardest thing yet. He called her. "I didn't call to ask for anything," Daniel said when she picked up. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not for being weak, but for closing the door when you tried to reach me." There was a long silence. "I didn't know how to reach you, Daniel," she whispered. "I didn't know how to ask for help." It wasn't a reconciliation, but a closing of a chapter. He told Miguel later that night, "The wound opened, but I survived the bleeding." When Miguel didn't show up for 3 days, Daniel panicked. He searched the neighborhood, asking shopkeepers until someone pointed him to a local shelter. He found Miguel in room 12, looking frail and pale. "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel asked, sitting by his bed. "Because you needed to learn to stand without me," Miguel whispered. Daniel asked about the man who had saved Miguel years ago. Miguel's eyes welled up. "It was my son," Miguel revealed. "He died 10 years ago. But before he left, he saved me. Since then, I sit on that bench because I can recognize the look of someone who is about to leave." Daniel held the old man's hand. "Who stays for you now?" "You do," Miguel replied. Daniel began visiting the shelter every day, helping with coffee and donations. His life was no longer defined by what he had lost, but by what he chose to give. He realized he was no longer just a survivor, he was a link in the chain. One afternoon, Daniel sat on the park bench alone. He looked at the people passing by, not as strangers, but as stories. He had an envelope in his pocket, a copy of the letter that saved him. He saw a young man stop by the fountain, head in hands, the weight of the world on his shoulders. Daniel stood up, felt the envelope in his hand, and walked toward him. "Excuse me," Daniel said softly. "I think you need to read this, before you make any decisions today." The silence of the park was no longer a wait. It was an invitation. Daniel realized that the end he had feared was actually just the beginning of a life worth living.